My presentation has three main themes. Um, this sort of my analysis of the current situation, socialist actions analysis, what our sort of plan of action is, and part of the presentation also I like to give an example of what a member of socialist action does within the labor movement. So there's a lot of reference to the work that I was involved with in particular. So this year, I had the opportunity to work towards mobilizing the largest bargaining unit in OPSEU, the Ontario Public Service, which represents 36,000 members in different ministries across the province. This was concession bargaining at the onset, as President Warren Smokey Thomas offered to accept a 2-year wage freeze without the approval of the membership. In fact, the members have prioritized wages in their demand set. The focus to our mobilizing efforts was to bring attention to what the issues were and to work towards attaining a strike vote. We worked at this for several months and into the holidays around Christmas. When we returned, after generally agreeing that we could get a strike vote across the province, although admittedly it was weak, the message from the bureaucracy had changed, and there was supposed fear that the membership would accept major concessions. So a vote was agreed upon on a concessionary contract, which includes the beginnings of a 2-tier wage within the Ontario Public Service, which will impact new and young hires and could eventually create major division in the future. These changes include a 2-year wage freeze, which represents a loss of over 4% of wages when inflation is taken into consideration. While members will continue to progress up the wage grid, the 3% lower first new step in the grid will have a major impact on new hires. The deal also removes termination pay for new employees who are surplus. These austerity concessions create a divide and conquer situation in the labor movement, which will benefit future ruling class attacks. I resigned from my position as a mobilizer over these issues, as I obviously couldn't sell it to the membership as something they could support. I was very frank about this when I made the decision. I basically told the staff of the union that I would be encouraging members not to vote in favor of the deal, and they said, "Thank you very much, you did a really great job," and I went back to my job. But I had nothing to lose. So I did, however, receive almost complete support from members and activists over my decision. And I wrote an article on the issue to explain the principal reasons for doing so. And I was one out of 2 mobilizers across the province who actually resigned over this deal. During the past year, union leaders and auto workers, steel workers, postal workers, and Catholic teachers have given way. Elementary and secondary public school teachers leaders caved to the Ontario Labour Relations Board ruling banning a 1-day political strike. Now all teachers are forced to live under the thumb of undemocratic Bill 115. In the wake of the devastating labor concessions at U.S. Steel in Hamilton, at Brazilian-owned Vale Inco in Sudbury, and at Canada Post in 2011, we've seen more self-inflicted setbacks. In the spring of 2012, Ontario Education Workers Union formed a common front against austerity. It was mostly talk, little action, and no strategy. One by one, the teachers' unions and CUPE Ontario capitulated to the McGuinty-Wynne agenda. Instead of withdrawing voluntary activities, teachers should have employed the tactic that won the right to strike in 1973, which was the mass resignation tactic, against which the government would have no recourse. Instead of agreeing to a 2-tier wage freeze before bargaining began, the office president, as I said, which he did, he could have mobilized members to defend wages, jobs, services, and the rights of the new hires. Sadly, union bureaucracy betrayed young workers. Young workers will have to repair the damage by replacing those labor statesmen. Labor brass rhetoric aside, concessions bargaining is now the norm, not the exception, impacting most harmful on youths, women, and immigrant workers. So how will a new generation of workers repair these damages? Not by the so-called left-centered unity tactic advanced by the Communist Party. This tactic chains workers to the whims of liberals and opportunists. Also wrong is the Toronto Labour Council's nearly exclusive focus on defeating Tim Hudak's Conservatives who threaten so-called right-to-work legislation. Don't forget, Liberals are Tories too. Liberals curtailed collective bargaining, suspended the right to strike, and prorogued the legislature. It is capitalist austerity that we must fight to defeat. Clearly, it will take more than an election to do it. It will take class struggle, plant by plant, community by community, through mass action, mass resistance, and general strike action. That leads to the fight for a workers' government. Activists across the labor movement have been aware of this move towards concessions and attacks on labor, and have not always responded in constructive ways. And we've certainly been talking about that this weekend, especially around our discussion on Leninism, for instance. But you don't have to be a Leninist to be necessarily effective in the labor movement. There have been some good signs recently as a result of the teachers' capitulation and the fight against austerity and division in the labor movement. Workers want to resist capitalist austerity. We saw signs of it in union elections in OPSEU, my union, where the Toronto region elected anti-austerity and pro-labor solidarity candidates to the executive board. And in the OSSTF, which Barry's a member, and OECTA, where pro-concession leaders were defeated or retired. We see it in the huge strike vote for the liquor board workers and their valiant struggle of the Toronto library workers. I was a co-creator of the OPSEU Solidarity Group, which was a group formed in OPSEU active to make OPSEU active in the Ontario Federation of Labour, because OPSEU had withdrawn its participation. We are a small but effective group of organizers made up of labor militants, left social democrats, and Trotskyists, including myself as a member of Representative Socialist Action and past and present members of the International Socialists. We created a resolution which received endorsement from over a dozen locals, as well as different area councils and committees within OPSEU. We also created a contact list and literature, as well as stickers. During the convention of 2012, we made this issue one of the biggest, next to the proposal for a dues increase, and this was last year. The bureaucrats made their best effort to stomp out our discussion on the issue, which they eventually got by preventing discussion of the issue, as we had lost quorum after 2 board members spoke against our resolution. The group continues to operate throughout the rest of 2012 and 2013 and gained more support and momentum. The issue of the OFL affiliation and participation was constantly brought up in discussion by activists in Region 5, the Toronto area. In fact, this issue, along with the need for an effective fight against austerity due to the results, as an example, of OPS bargaining, which I had mentioned, led to several anti-austerity candidates running for the executive board of Region 5 and winning largely over the issue of the OFL and reaffiliation and participation. All 3 positions are now held by anti-austerity and pro-OFL activists. After the elections, work continued in the OPSEU Solidarity Group in participation and preparation for the upcoming convention, which took place several weeks ago. Resolutions were endorsed, literature created, contacts were made. The OPSEU Solidarity Group made this the issue of convention in 2013, and during the debate on the resolution, forced the leadership to agree to the need for OPSEU to return to the OFL, and also prevented the usual vitriol from occurring, including Warren Smokey Thomas criticizing Sid Ryan for being too short physically. We lost the vote.
That's important.
Yes, yeah. This is the level it was at, folks. We lost the vote after the leadership, who had more experience with public speaking and who much of the loyal delegates who want to be in the leader's favor, for book-off opportunities example, agreed to the board members who spoke against the resolution, as they claimed the OFL was too corrupt at this time to participate in. Unfortunately, the number of stickers that we distributed did not convert to the number of votes in our favor. Most people wore our stickers that said solidarity with the OFL, and I guess they're more fans of the stickers than the issue. So while we lost this important vote, there was still some rebellion in the air. An attempt by the board to change the policy around OPS bargaining which included the removal of input from the MERC and CERCS, which is the Ministry Employer Relations Committee and the Central Employer Relations Committee. The removal of requirements to mobilize members and locals, as well as other cost-cutting measures, was resoundingly defeated in the OPS divisional meeting. Rank and file members attacked the leadership for not asking for input from any bodies within the OPS, and that includes the bargaining team. I went to a mic and asked that the entire proposal be scrapped, which got applause from delegates present, as not a single member in over the 200 members who were in the meeting, not a single member voted in favor of the proposed changes to the bargaining procedures. On the convention floor, the proposed changes were, I'm not sure if they were referred, but basically they were removed from discussion before there was a chance for debate. In an act of extreme arrogance, former executive board member from Region 3, Mike Grimaldi, who was partially responsible for the undemocratic changes, was heard saying, "It's easy to make stupid people happy." He was challenged by a member on the floor and apologized. In a recent discussion with activists involved with the campaign to return officer to the OFL, Wayne Samuelson, past president of the OFL, commented that the OFL was in trouble due to locals from Steele, for instance, leaving, as well as he described as bad leadership from Sid Ryan.
It's too short.
Yeah, right. The OFL, like all labor bodies today, clearly has its issues. And there's clearly a lack of confidence in the leadership of the OFL to fight back against austerity and win. While we argue that a divided House of Labor is a bad thing, it is quite clear that the present leadership of our labor movement is not up to the task of challenging austerity in a real way. The OFL if the OFL had inspired rank and file activists with mass action and victories, it would be much more difficult for the opportunistic bureaucrats who are doing no better job themselves to divide the labor movement to benefit themselves. Over the last several months, there have been rumors of the creation of a new coalition of labor unions to rival the OFL in Ontario. We have serious battles ahead, including the fight against new free trade deals and right-to-work legislation. What is needed today is a cross-union left caucus.
3 minutes.
Typically, union bureaucrats lack confidence in the membership, which is why they did not want the chance to do a strike vote in the case of OPS bargaining. The idea that labor will turn things around when the economy recovers, or that a struggle against management will occur without the union rank and file challenging and overcoming the union bureaucracy are grand illusions. Class struggle opposition in each union is no abstract ideal. It is an urgent necessity to avoid an accelerating descent towards labor health. A very disturbing pattern of union concessions to the boss's agenda has taken hold of the labor movement across the Canadian state. Even unions with a progressive reputation have reached contract settlements that erode or utterly abandon job security, wage protection, health benefits, and severance pay. While sacrificing equal rights for new hires, increasingly union officials are teaming up with management, both in the public and private sectors. They are working together to impose bad deals on workers and to cripple or crush workers' resistance to the corporate agenda by curtailing union democracy and local autonomy. When union leaders refuse to advance legitimate grievances, when they turn a blind eye to employer discrimination and unsafe working conditions, when they seize control of local bargaining units to remove democratically elected leaders and then give away decades of hard-won union gains, they show which side they are on. Workers know that it is we who built unions. It is the rank and file which must reclaim the unions to fight for all workers' needs, for the unionized and non-union, employed and unemployed. In 1991, over 20 labor and community organizations joined together to launch the Workers' Solidarity Coalition in Toronto. Its initial purpose was to organize support for key public sector strikes involving postal workers and federal public service employees. Unions deserve to have every class-conscious worker, every progressive person, feminist, youth, senior, and environmentalist on their picket lines. These strikes, which challenged a major Tory initiative to attack labor and public services. We were relatively successful in that fight. Now the stakes are higher. The global neoliberal agenda is more extensive, more intense, and it is relentless. And increasingly, union officials are caving into it and turning their fire on union members who resist concessions. That is why we need the worker solidarity more than ever. We have taken the initiative to launch a militant cross-union movement in alliance with community-based groups and local activists. A class struggle opposition builds up a defined membership. It challenges the current leadership based on a clear program and a firm set of principles. The program of the Worker Solidarity and Union Democracy Coalition stand for the following. Our aim is to 1. Resist labor concessions and social cutbacks. 2. Support struggles for union democracy to make unions more accessible, accountable, transparent, and participatory. 3. Take back our unions and turn them into fighting organizations. 4. Rely on our own strength and renew or create our own organizations from the bottom up to fight for the interests of working people and against corporate profits and power. The Worker Solidarity and Union Democracy Coalition was launched at a conference held in 2004. I think it was relaunched in 2004. Currently, we are campaigning for public ownership of basic industry and energy resources, in support of OCAP's Raise the Rates campaign, and for greater democracy in the unions. We invite you to attend our public forums at labor conventions. Together, we can prove that the most right-wing government in Canadian history is a paper tiger. We can show that it can be blown away by a strong wave of class struggle. Let's force the labor leadership to lead the fight or get the heck out of the way. This entails the construction of a militant, well-organized left wing in the unions and the NDP. To that task, Socialist Action is absolutely committed. If you agree, join Socialist Action. To join and or endorse the coalition, please see myself, or you can see Barry after the session. Thank you.